My son's Juliette Fontaine once called me an ugly cow in her native language, thinking I couldn't understand her. I smiled politely and poured her more wine. 3 hours later, I casually mentioned to her parents that immigration might be very interested in our conversation. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. But let me back up and explain how I discovered that my future daughter-in-law was not what she seemed. A gold-digging fraud with a charming accent. It all began on a crisp October evening in Austin. Ethan, my 35-year-old son, had finally brought home the mysterious Juliette woman he'd been dating for 6 months. Emily Parker was everything I'd imagined from his glowing descriptions: petite, elegant, and effortlessly stylish, the kind of grace Juliette women seem to be born with. Her English was flawless, laced with just enough accent to sound alluring rather than hard to understand. "Mrs. Parker," she said warmly, taking both my hands in hers. "Ethan has told me so much about you. I'm thrilled to finally meet the woman who raised such a wonderful man. I liked her instantly." After Ethan's string of shallow girlfriends who couldn't even remember my name, Camille's interest in our family history felt like a blessing. She asked thoughtful questions about the photos on my mantle, complimented my cooking with what seemed like sincere appreciation, and even helped clear the table without being asked. Ethan beamed throughout dinner, clearly besotted. "Camille speaks 5 languages fluently," he boasted, squeezing her hand. "She's been teaching me Juliet, though I'm hopeless at it." "Oh, you're too modest," Camille laughed, her eyes sparkling. "His pronunciation is, how do you say, endearing?" We all laughed, and for a moment I truly believed Ethan had found someone worthy of him, someone with substance, intelligence, and warmth. Someone who might finally stay long enough for me to get attached. That feeling lasted exactly 47 minutes. After dinner, Ethan stepped out to take an urgent work call. I was in the kit miller loading the dishwasher when Camille's phone rang. She answered in rapid-fire Juliet, her voice drifting from the living room, confident and unguarded, the way people sound when they think no one understands them. Here's the thing about assumptions. They make people careless. I'd spent 4 years in Lyon as an au pair to pay for college. My Juliet might be rusty, but it's far from gone. And what I heard next made my blood run cold. "Yes, Mama," Camille was saying. "She seems harmless enough. Clearly desperate to keep her son happy. She'll be easy to manage once we're married." I froze, a dinner plate suspended midair. The house is lovely, bigger than Ethan described. And yes, there are definitely family assets to consider. She mentioned his father left them very comfortable. Camille laughed, a sound that was musical, yet chilling. "Don't worry. I've already started working on the inheritance angle. Americans are so sentimental about family legacy." My hands trembled, but I forced myself to keep working, the clatter of dishes masking my shock. Ethan is perfect for this. Naive, generous, completely infatuated. The green card will be simple once we're married. And the divorce? Even simpler once I have what I need. 2 years maximum. Then I'll be free to return to Paris with American citizenship and enough money to live as I choose. The plate slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. "Mrs. Parker, are you all right?" Camille appeared in the doorway, her face arranged into perfect concern. "Just clumsy," I managed, kneeling to collect the pieces. "These old hands aren't what they used to be." She hurried to help me, moving with grace and apparent kindness. "Please let me do this. You shouldn't be cleaning up after hosting such a wonderful dinner." The irony was so thick I could taste it. This woman had just finished plotting to manipulate and rob my son. And now, she was helping me clean broken dishes with the tenderness of an actual caring daughter-in-law. "I have much experience with cleaning," she added with a self-deprecating laugh. "I worked in hotels in Paris before meeting Ethan. Very humbling work. It taught me to appreciate when others make an effort for me." Another lie. Delivered so smoothly, I almost believed it. Almost. Ethan returned from his call, apologizing. "Sorry about that. Crisis at the site, but it's handled now." He saw us cleaning together and his face lit up like Christmas morning. "Look at you two, already acting like family." Camille stood gracefully, disposing of the shards. Your mother is wonderful, Sherry. So warm and welcoming. I feel very lucky. She was good, professionally good. Every gesture, every smile, every carefully chosen word reinforced her story. The grateful foreign girl, charmed by American family values, eager to belong. And I found my voice. Well, aren't you sweet? Ethan's right. You already feel like family. We settled into the living room with coffee, and Camille launched into what I now recognized as carefully rehearsed stories about her life in France, the struggling artist narrative, the difficult childhood that made her appreciate Ethan's stability, the dream of building a life in America with the right partner. Every word felt deliberate, crafted to stir Ethan's protective instincts and feed his American savior complex. And it was working beautifully. My son hung on every syllable, his eyes soft with the kind of love that makes even smart men do incredibly foolish things. Tell Mom about the visa situation, Ethan prompted gently. She's always been good at navigating bureaucracy. Camille's eyes flickered almost imperceptibly, but her smile didn't falter. Oh, it's complicated but not urgent. My tourist visa is good for several more months. Ethan's been helping me understand the process for something more permanent. The pause she left was perfectly timed, allowing Ethan to fill in the romantic implications without her needing to lie outright. It was masterful. We're thinking about engagement soon, Ethan said, reaching for her hand. Once Camille settled and comfortable with the idea of staying permanently, I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. When you know, I suppose. Camille ducked her head modestly. I never expected to find someone like Ethan. Sometimes the heart surprises us. Oh, the heart had definitely been surprised tonight, just not in the way she meant. As the evening wound down and Ethan walked Camille to her car, I stood at the window, watching them embrace. She was saying something that made him laugh, probably spinning another beautiful story about their future together. He looked so happy, so hopeful, so completely unaware that the woman in his arms saw him as nothing more than a stepping stone to American residency and whatever money she could draw from our family. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my late husband's study, surrounded by 40 years of financial documents and family records, trying to understand exactly what Camille thought she was targeting. Robert had been a careful man, methodical in his approach to security. Our assets weren't flashy, but they were substantial. The house alone was worth close to $800,000, sitting on 2 acres in one of Austin's most desirable neighborhoods. The investment portfolios, retirement accounts, and life insurance policies painted a picture of quiet, upper-middle-class comfort. Not extravagant, but certainly enough to tempt someone with Camille's apparent agenda. What chilled me most was how efficiently she'd assessed our situation. One dinner, and she'd already calculated inheritance angles and timeline strategies. This wasn't impulsive opportunism. This was professional predation. By dawn, I had made 2 decisions. First, I would not tell Ethan what I'd overheard. Not yet. He was so deeply infatuated that any accusation from me would only drive him closer to her, casting me as the jealous mother who couldn't accept her son's happiness. I'd seen enough Lifetime movies to know how that story ends. Second, I needed to find out exactly who Emily Parker really was. I started with the basics: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Her social media presence was polished but thin, mostly photos from the last 18 months. No deep history, no childhood friends, no family members tagged in old posts. The few pictures from France were generic tourist shots that could have been taken by anyone. Her LinkedIn claimed she worked in hospitality management in Paris, but the company names were vague. No colleagues, no recommendations. For someone supposedly in her late 20s with a career in the hospitality industry, her professional network was suspiciously sparse. I was deep in internet rabbit holes when my phone rang. Ethan's name flashed on the screen, and my heart clenched with guilt. How do you talk to your child when you know something that will devastate them but can't prove it yet? Morning, Mom. Thanks again for last night. Camille couldn't stop talking about how wonderful you were. I bet she couldn't. She's lovely, sweetheart. I can see why you're so taken with her. I'm thinking about proposing soon, he said, his voice bright with excitement. Maybe Christmas. I know it's fast, but when it's right, it's right. Christmas, 2 months away. My stomach nodded. That's wonderful news, Ethan. Have you thought about what kind of proposal? Where you might do it? As he chatted about his romantic plans, I was calculating timelines in my head. If they married quickly after the holidays, she'd have her green card application filed by spring. 2 years later, she'd be eligible for permanent residency. 2 years after that, full citizenship. Then the divorce, carefully timed to maximize her take from community property. 4 years. She was planning to systematically dismantle my son's life over 4 years. Mom, you still there? Sorry, darling. Just thinking about how happy this makes me. The lie came easier than I expected. Have you met her family yet? Her parents? Not in person, but we video chat with them sometimes. They live in Marseille. Her father's a retired teacher. Her mother works in local government. Very traditional family, which is why she's careful about the engagement timeline. They want to meet me properly first. Traditional family. If they truly existed, they were probably horrified by their daughter's immigration scheme. Or maybe they were in on it, coaching her through her long-distance plan to dismantle an American family. That sounds reasonable, I said carefully. Maybe you should visit them before proposing. Really understand where she comes from. Actually, they're planning to visit us next month. Camille wanted them to meet you before we make anything official. She values family approval. Of course she did. Meet the Marks family, charm the parents, establish herself as the perfect future daughter-in-law, then rush toward marriage before anyone had time to ask difficult questions. After Ethan hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen, feeling the weight of impossible choices. I could hire a private investigator, but that felt like crossing a line that might damage my relationship with Ethan no matter what we found. I could confront Camille directly, but she was clearly skilled at manipulation, and I had only an overheard phone call as evidence, or I could be patient. Play the long game. Let her think she was winning while I gathered the information I needed to expose her completely. That's when I thought of my sister's youngest daughter, Claire. She worked in visa services at the State Department. Family connections can be incredibly useful when you need to spot immigration fraud, I said. Aunt Margaret, you're putting me in a difficult spot, Claire replied, her voice careful over the phone. We were at a sister lunch date in my favorite cafe, though I wasn't really paying attention to my salad. I'm not asking you to do anything improper, I said, stirring my iced tea slowly. I just want to understand the general process. For educational purposes, Claire laughed despite herself. Educational purposes, right? And none of this has anything to do with Ethan's mysterious Juliet girlfriend. You always were too sharp for your own good, I teased, leaning back and studying my niece's face. Claire had our family's instincts. Sharp, practical, no nonsense. If anyone could help me, it was her. Tell me everything you know, she said quietly. So I told her. The overheard phone call, the sparse social media presence, the convenient backstory that seemed to hit all of Ethan's emotional triggers. Claire listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each detail. There are red flags, she admitted when I finished. The timeline is rushed. The background check looks shallow. Frankly, the whole story reads like a chapter from a manual on marriage fraud indicators. There's a manual? I asked. Oh, honey, there are several. Immigration fraud is a cottage industry. Variations of this pattern show up all the time. The difference is the level of sophistication. Claire pulled out her phone and showed me a government checklist. Look, how many boxes does she tick? As we went through the indicators, my heart sank. Camille wasn't just suspicious. She looked like a textbook case. Rushed timeline. Financial motive. A thin, unverifiable past. An age gap that favored the immigrant. Emotional manipulation aimed at the American partner. The thing is, Claire continued, knowing something and proving it are very different. These people are professionals. They've studied American men. They know which buttons to push and how to cover their tracks. So what should I do? I asked, Claire was quiet for a long moment. Officially, I'd tell Ethan to slow down, do real due diligence, and insist on meeting her family in France before he makes any commitments. Unofficially, I'd gather evidence, document everything, and be prepared that by the time you have proof, the marriage might already have happened. But even then, you can limit the damage. I thought of the damage, my son's broken heart, the financial losses, his shaken faith in love. The ripple effects could last years. Some wounds never truly heal. There's something else, Claire said carefully. If she's doing this professionally, Ethan probably isn't her first target. These operations often reuse the same methods. There could be other victims, other sons, other families destroyed by Camille's charm. The thought made a cold fury rise inside me. How would I find them? Very carefully, Claire warned, and strictly legally. But patterns leave traces: immigration applications, marriage records, divorce filings. It's public information if you know where to look. By the end of lunch, I had a plan. It wasn't pretty or simple, but it was thorough. If Emily Parker was a professional con artist, she'd soon find out Margaret Parker wasn't as harmless as she appeared. That afternoon, I made 3 calls. First, to a private investigator Claire recommended, someone who specialized in background checks and discretion. Second, to my attorney, updating my will and putting new financial safeguards in place. Not because of Camille yet, but so we'd be ready for any outcome. The third call mattered most. Ethan, sweetheart, I said warmly. I've been thinking about what you said. Camille's parents visit next month. I'd love to host them for dinner, a proper welcome. And I should brush up on my Juliet before they arrive. Maybe take a short refresher. Good idea, Mom, he said. That sounds lovely. The PI's name was Daniel Harris, and he looked nothing like a thriller novel stereotype. No trench coat or fedora, just a calm man in his 50s who could have been anyone's accountant. The best investigations happen when nobody knows they're being investigated, he said, settling across from me with a manila folder and a cup of coffee. Especially when the subject expects scrutiny. 2 weeks after hiring him, the preliminary results were grim. Let's start with what we can confirm, Marcus said, opening the folder. Emily Parker entered the U.S. on a tourist visa 8 months ago. The address she listed was a short-term rental she vacated after 6 weeks, the same period around when she likely met your son. So she came here with a purpose, Marcus said. It's looking that way. He showed me photographs and social media snippets. In the month before leaving France, she'd researched American dating apps, joined international relationship sites, and frequented forums about U.S. immigration law. The photos often showed her alone at a laptop in cafes, intense, focused, sometimes calculating. The company she claims to have worked for in Paris did exist, but it closed 3 years ago. The references she gave Ethan are fake. The phone numbers redirect to voice services with pre-recorded messages. My coffee went cold as Marcus laid out the fabrications. False employment, no verifiable address in France for 2 years, and social media links suggesting contact with other American men before Ethan. There's more, he said quietly. Evidence of at least 2 prior attempts at marriage-based immigration fraud. Different names, different stories, same methods, same face. He slid across 2 more photos. One of Camille with a man outside a Nevada courthouse. Another from a small Colorado paper announcing a marriage under the name Marie Fontaine. Both unions ended in divorce within 2 years. Both left the American husband with debt and emotional trauma, and both saw Camille vanish, later resurfacing with American citizenship and the couple's assets gone. I stared at the photos, sick. Ethan didn't know. He knew only the carefully crafted fiction Camille had fed him. Margaret, Marcus said, this isn't just fraud. It's a criminal enterprise. We're dealing with someone who's destroyed families and shows no sign of stopping. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. What do I do with this? I asked. That depends on what you want, Marcus said. Do you want to save Ethan from a terrible mistake? Or do you want to make sure Camille faces consequences? Both, I said without hesitation. I want both. We need strategy, Marcus warned. Move too fast and she'll disappear. Move too slow and the fraud will proceed on schedule. He produced a timeline. Her parents would arrive next week, likely actors, an engagement would follow, and then a Christmas proposal timed for a New Year's wedding. New Year's offers tax and immigration timing advantages. It's classic emotional manipulation wrapped in romance. Are you prepared to play a longer game than she is? Marcus asked. That evening, I sat in the garden as the sunset burned gold and crimson across the sky. Somewhere across town, Ethan was probably having dinner with his Fontaine, planning a future I now suspected was built on lies. Next week I'd meet fake parents, speak my rusty Juliet, and pretend to believe a love story that felt like an elaborate con. But Emily Parker had miscalculated. She'd assumed a 64-year-old widow would be too polite to probe, too grateful for her son's happiness to look too closely at where it came from. She was about to learn that assumption could be dangerously wrong. The doorbell rang at exactly 6. I smoothed my dress one last time before opening the door. Camille stood on my porch, flanked by an elegant older couple who looked like they'd stepped out of a movie about sophisticated Juliet parents. Mrs. Parker, Camille said, her smile bright and practiced. I'd like you to meet my parents, Henri and Margot Dubois. Henri stepped forward with old-world courtesy, took my hand and kissed it lightly. Madam Parker, we are honored to meet the mother of the man who has captured our daughter's heart. His Juliet accent was flawless. His manner was exactly what you'd expect from a retired teacher from Marseille. Margot embraced me warmly, smelling of expensive perfume, and launched into rapid, enthusiastic Juliet about how wonderful it was to finally meet me. They were convincing, professionally convincing. Please come in, I said, my Juliet deliberately rusty. I apologize for my poor pronunciation. It's been many years since I spoke your beautiful language. The effect was immediate. Camille's eyes flickered with something like concern, while the couple exchanged the briefest of glances. They hadn't expected me to speak Juliet at all, much less pick up on their accents. Parisian, not Marseillais. Ethan arrived as we were settling in, carrying wine and flowers and practically glowing. Aren't they wonderful, Mom? I feel like I've gained a whole new family. As the evening went on, I played the part I'd rehearsed. The charmed future in-law asked gentle questions about life in France. I praised how happy I was that Ethan had found such a loving, stable family. But I was listening, really listening, and what I heard confirmed everything Daniel Harris had warned me about. Henry's stories about teaching were vague and generic, the sort anyone could stitch together from online research. Margot's descriptions of her government work contradicted themselves in the same conversation. Most revealing were the private Juliet exchanges they thought I couldn't understand. References to Paris, not Marseille. Pass the salt, would you? This American food is so bland, Margot murmured in Juliet. At least the wine is decent, Henri replied. I miss proper cheese. These Americans have no palate. In English, they praised my cooking and gushed about the authentic American hospitality. Their two faces didn't match. The moment that sealed it came during coffee. Ethan had gone into the Kit Miller to help with dessert when Camille slipped into rapid Juliet with her parents. She's harmless, but not stupid. Keep the details consistent and don't get too comfortable. We're almost at the finish line, she said. The son is completely hooked, Henri answered. When do you want to do the proposal timeline? Next week. Christmas Eve engagement, New Year's wedding, emotional timing. Hard for anyone to object. They thought they were speaking privately. They thought their secret was safe. They had no idea the quiet American widow serving coffee and apple pie understood every calculated word. As they prepared to leave, Margot took my hands. We are so grateful Camille found Ethan. Your family is everything, don't you agree? Oh, absolutely, I said, smiling serenely. Family is the most important thing in the world. We'd do anything to protect the people we love. After they left, Ethan lingered to help me clean up, buzzing with excitement. They're amazing, aren't they? So warm and genuine. I can see where Camille gets her character. They're certainly impressive, I agreed. Very polished. He lowered his voice. I'm thinking about proposing next week, Christmas Eve, like in the movies. What do you think? I turned away, ostensibly to load the dishwasher, really to hide the expression on my face. I think she's a very lucky woman to have found you, sweetheart, I said. In truth, Camille had just made two fatal mistakes, underestimating me and telling me her timeline while I still had the power to stop it. Christmas Eve was 8 days away. She had 8 days to believe she was winning. I had 8 days to make her lose everything. That night, I called Daniel Harris and said 3 words: accelerate the timeline. He arrived the next morning with a briefcase full of evidence and a plan both elegant and ruthless. We move tomorrow, he said, spreading documents across my dining room table. Christmas Eve, just before the proposal, maximum emotional impact, minimum chances to run. The evidence was damning. Bank records showing wire transfers to Camille from previous victims, immigration papers with multiple identities, photographs of her with other men and broken families, and most damning of all, recorded calls between Camille and her real handler. Not fake parents, but a criminal network specializing in marriage fraud. She's not just a con artist, Marcus explained. She's part of a network. They find targets, build backstories, provide supporting actors, and take a cut of whatever they can extract. A photo showed Camille with a man in his 50s outside a Miami courthouse, time-stamped 18 months earlier. How many families can we prove she's destroyed? I asked. 7, Marcus said. But the pattern suggests more. His financial analysis made my stomach turn. Conservative estimate, over $2 million stolen in 5 years. 2 million. 7 families. And Ethan was about to be number 8. Here's the plan, Marcus said. Tomorrow evening, when Ethan brings Camille for Christmas Eve dinner before he proposes, we'll have unexpected guests. Agent Sarah Miller from Immigration and Customs Enforcement will arrive during dinner, ostensibly for a routine follow-up on Camille's visa. What she'll actually do is arrest her for immigration fraud based on Marcus's file. Timing is crucial, Marcus warned. Too early and she might bolt. Too late and Ethan's already engaged. We have to thread the needle. That afternoon, I moved through the motions of preparing Christmas Eve like an actor rehearsing the performance of her life. Cooking Ethan's favorite meal, setting my grandmother's china, wrapping presents that would never be opened. Each domestic detail felt surreal, knowing what was coming. At 4, Ethan called, voice bright with nerves. Mom, we'll be there at 6, Ka. I'm going to propose after dinner. I've got the ring. The ring? My grandmother's engagement ring? Passed down through 3 generations of Parker women, about to be offered to a woman who saw Ethan as a paycheck. I can't wait to celebrate with you both, I managed. At 5:45, the doorbell rang. Agent Miller stood on my porch in attire that could pass for dinner party appropriate. Younger than I'd pictured, with kind eyes that turned steely when she spoke of Camille's crimes. Wait until after the main course, she said quietly. Let her settle in. Let her feel safe. Then I'll show my credentials and place her under arrest. Ethan will be hurt and angry, probably at you at first, but he'll understand. The alternative is watching her destroy him over the next 2 years. At exactly 6, Ethan's car pulled into the driveway. From the window, I watched him take Camille's hand, whispering last-minute reassurances about the proposal. She looked radiant and confident, utterly unaware that her career of calculated lies was about to end in my dining room. Showtime, Agent Miller said softly. Camille stepped inside and kissed my cheeks in the Juliet style. Mrs. Parker, dinner smells absolutely wonderful, she exclaimed. She wore an elegant red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and she looked every inch the poised European woman about to become an American bride. Ethan was practically trembling with nervous energy, patting the pocket of his jacket where the ring box made a telltale bulge. Mom, I think this might be our best Christmas Eve ever, he whispered. If only he knew. Agent Miller had stationed herself in the living room, pretending to flip through a magazine I'd left out on purpose. To Ethan and Camille, she looked like any friendly neighbor who'd stopped by for the holidays. Who's your guest? Ethan asked, nodding toward the living room. Oh, that's Sarah, my neighbor's niece, I said smoothly. She's visiting for the holidays and didn't have anywhere to go tonight. I hope you don't mind that I invited her to join us." Camille's smile didn't falter, but I caught the flicker of calculation in her eyes. An unexpected witness to the proposal wasn't ideal, but it wasn't alarming either. Just another detail in her carefully managed evening. Dinner unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. Ethan spoke about his work, his plans for the new year, and his excitement about building a life with Camille. She responded with perfect warmth, asking thoughtful questions and making gentle jokes that had him laughing, falling deeper under her spell with every passing moment. Meanwhile, Agent Miller made polite small talk about her job in government consulting and complimented Camille's accent, dress, and charming stories about France. To anyone watching, it looked like a lovely family dinner with an unexpected but welcome guest. But I wasn't watching the dinner. I was watching Camille. As the evening progressed, I noticed subtle shifts in her behavior. The way her eyes flicked toward Agent Miller when she thought no one was looking. The tension in her shoulders whenever Miller asked casual questions about her background. The almost imperceptible pause before she answered questions about her visa status. Professional criminals develop instincts for law enforcement, and something about Agent Miller was setting off Camille's alarms. She couldn't pinpoint the threat yet, but she could feel it. "This has been wonderful," Camille said as we finished the main course. "But perhaps we should think about heading home soon." "It's getting late," Ethan frowned. "But we haven't had dessert yet, and I thought we might exchange gifts." "Of course," Camille said brightly, her smile sharpening. "I'm just thinking about the drive home in this weather." There was no weather. It was a clear, calm December evening. She simply wanted to leave, and she wanted to leave now. Agent Miller rose from her chair casually. "Actually, before anyone goes anywhere, I should probably introduce myself properly." She pulled out her credentials, her voice taking on a firm, official tone. "Agent Sarah Miller, Immigration and Customs Enforcement." "Miss Dubois, I need to speak with you about discrepancies in your visa documentation." The transformation in Camille was instantaneous. The warm, charming woman vanished, replaced by someone cold and calculating. Her accent disappeared completely, revealing perfect American English underneath. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said evenly. "My documentation is entirely in order." Ethan stared between them, his face a mask of confusion. "What's going on? What discrepancies?" Agent Miller showed him photos Marcus had compiled. "Mr. Parker, the woman you know as Emily Parker is actually named Jessica Marsh. She's wanted for immigration fraud, identity theft, and multiple counts of marriage fraud across 7 states." The ring box slipped from Ethan's suddenly numb fingers, hitting the hardwood floor with a sound like breaking dreams. The silence after Agent Miller's revelation lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then Ethan exploded. "What the hell is this?" He spun toward me, his eyes blazing with betrayal and fury. You knew and didn't tell me." "Ethan, please let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been investigating the woman I love behind my back? That you've been lying to me for weeks?" His voice cracked with pain. "I trusted you, Mom. I brought her here because I trusted your judgment. And this is what you do?" Camille, Jessica, sat very still, her mind clearly racing through options and escape routes. But Agent Miller stood between her and the door, and backup officers were already surrounding the house. "Mr. Parker," Agent Miller said gently, "I know this is shocking, but your mother likely saved you from years of financial and emotional devastation. The woman you know as Camille has defrauded 7 other men out of nearly $2 million. Ethan shook his head violently. "No. You're wrong. This is some kind of mistake. Camille isn't. She wouldn't." He turned to her desperately. "Tell them they're wrong. Tell them this is all some horrible mix-up." For a moment, I thought she might keep up the charade. But then she saw the evidence on Agent Miller's phone, calculated the odds, and made a different choice. She laughed, a cold, amused sound that had nothing of Camille's musical accent. "Oh, Ethan," she said flatly, You poor, sweet, foolish man. She picked up her wine glass and took a sip as if discussing the weather. Did you really think someone like me would fall for someone like you without an ulterior motive? Ethan went pale. What? You're boring, Ethan. Predictable. The kind of man who thinks buying flowers and opening doors makes him irresistible to sophisticated European women. She gestured dismissively. I've played this role so many times I could do it in my sleep. Vulnerable foreign girl, charmed by American stability, grateful for protection and security. It works every single time. The cruelty was breathtaking. She wasn't just confessing, she was dismantling him for sport. The accent, the stories about France, everything was research and performance. I spent 3 weeks studying your social media, your interests, your psychological profile before I ever approached you at that coffee shop. Did you think it was coincidence that I was reading your favorite book when we met? Ethan sat down heavily, like his legs could no longer hold him. You said a friend recommended that book. Amazon reviews and customer data, she said coolly. I bought 5 books I knew would appeal to lonely, divorced men in their 30s looking for intellectual connection. You were the easiest mark in the coffee shop that day. Agent Miller moved closer, handcuffs ready. Jessica Marsh, you're high. Under arrest for immigration fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit marriage fraud. But Jessica wasn't finished. She looked straight at me, her eyes burning with hatred. You think you've won? She sneered. You've destroyed your relationship with your son to stop something that was always going to end anyway. I would have divorced him in 2 years, taken my cut, and disappeared. Now he'll spend the rest of his life wondering if every woman who shows interest in him is just another con artist. She turned back to Ethan, who stared at her like she was a stranger, which, of course, she was. Your mother didn't save you, Ethan. She just ensured you'll never trust love again. Agent Miller led Jessica away in handcuffs, but not before one last revelation that chilled me to the core. Wait, Jessica called out as they reached the front door. Don't you want to know about the real Emily Parker? Agent Miller paused. What about her? Jessica's smile was vicious. She's real, 28 years old, lives in Marseille with her parents, works in hotel management, just like I claimed. I studied her social media for months, stole her identity piece by piece, built my cover story around her actual life. My blood went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying there's a real woman in France who has no idea her identity was stolen, who might be getting visits from American immigration officials asking questions about her fictional boyfriend and his family. Jessica's eyes glittered with malice. I'm saying your investigation might have just destroyed an innocent person's life, along with your son's. The front door closed behind them, leaving Ethan and me alone in the wreckage of Christmas Eve dinner. He sat motionless at the dining room table, staring at the scattered evidence of his shattered fairy tale. Is it true? He asked quietly. What she said about the real Camille. I sank into the chair across from him, feeling every one of my 64 years. I don't know. Marcus, the investigator I hired, he'll have to look into it. Marcus? Ethan's voice was flat. How long have you known? 3 weeks, I said softly. Since the night she called me an ugly cow in Juliet, thinking I couldn't understand her. For the first time since Agent Miller had revealed the truth, Ethan looked directly at me. She called you what? She was on the phone with someone, speaking Juliet, explaining how she was going to manipulate you into marriage, and then divorce you for money and citizenship. I heard everything. Ethan was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. The sound was bitter, sharp, but not completely without humor. An ugly cow, that's actually pretty accurate considering how she played me. Ethan, no. She's right about one thing. I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone again. He stood, moving to the window where he could see Agent Miller's car pulling away. 3 weeks, Mom. You knew for 3 weeks that the woman I loved was planning to destroy my life, and you didn't tell me. You wouldn't have believed me. Maybe not, but you could have tried. He turned back to me, and in his eyes I saw something I'd never seen before, disappointment so deep it felt like grief. Instead, you orchestrated this whole evening. Let me make a fool of myself. Let me get excited about proposing. You even let me bring her into our family home for one last act before you brought it all crashing down. He was right. We both knew it. I could have handled this differently. Found a way to warn him, to protect him from the humiliation of being arrested in front of the woman who had been quietly destroying his life. I was trying to protect you, I said weakly. By lying to me? By investigating behind my back? By treating me like I was too stupid to handle the truth? Ethan picked up the ring box from the floor, staring at it like it was something toxic. This was Grandma's ring. Yes, she would have worn it, taken it with her when she divorced me. Grandma's ring would have ended up in some pawn shop or sold online to fund her next con. The thought hadn't occurred to me before, but it hit like a physical blow. 4 generations of family history reduced to criminal profit. Ethan pocketed the ring box and headed for the door. I need some time to process this. Ethan, wait. I love you, Mom, but I can't be around you right now. Every time I look at you, I'm going to think about how you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. The door closed quietly behind him, leaving me alone with the remains of Christmas Eve dinner, and the weight of choices that had been both completely right and utterly devastating. But Jessica had made one final mistake in her parting shot. She'd revealed the existence of the real Emily Parker, and that meant there was still one more chapter to this story, one more chance to find something redemptive in the wreckage. That night, I called Daniel Harris with new instructions. Find the real Camille, and find out how to make this right. 2 months later, I was standing in the International Arrivals Terminal at Austin Bergstrom International Airport, holding a sign with Emily Parker written in my neatest handwriting. The real Emily Parker was exactly as Jessica had described. Her, 28, petite, with the kind of effortless Juliet style that can't be faked. But where Jessica had been calculating and cold beneath her charm, the real Camille radiated genuine warmth. Mrs. Parker? She asked in accented English, approaching cautiously. I am Camille, the real one, I think. I couldn't help smiling. Yes, you're definitely the real one. Thank you for coming. What had started as damage control had grown into something far more meaningful. Marcus's investigation revealed that Jessica's identity theft had indeed caused real harm. Juliet authorities had questioned Camille about her supposed American boyfriend. Her bank accounts had been frozen pending investigation, and her reputation in her small town had been damaged by association with international fraud. But more than that, we discovered Camille was facing her own family crisis. Her mother was battling cancer, and the medical bills were threatening to bankrupt them. The money I'd offered to bring her to Austin for a face-to-face explanation had been gratefully accepted as a chance to earn extra income during a desperate time. I still don't understand, Camille said as we walked to my car. Why would someone pretend to be me? My life is not so interesting. It was perfect for her, I explained. Real enough to be verifiable, ordinary enough not to raise suspicion. She studied your social media, your work, your family, your interests, and used all of it to create a cover story. Over the next 3 days, I got to know the woman my son should have met instead of the criminal who had nearly destroyed his life. Camille was funny, intelligent, and refreshingly honest about her struggles and dreams. She was also nursing a broken heart, a relationship that had ended badly 6 months earlier with a man who cheated on her with her best friend. It is strange, she said on our second evening as we sat in my garden sharing a bottle of wine. This woman, she stole my name, my history, even my heartbreak to make her story more believable. It feels like being robbed of yourself. I'm so sorry, I said. If I had known there was a real person behind the identity, you would have done the same thing, Camille said firmly. You protected your son. That is what mothers do. Ethan agreed to meet her on her final day in Austin. He was still barely speaking to me, but his curiosity about the real person behind Jessica's lies eventually overcame his anger. They met at the same coffee shop, where Jessica had first approached him, a detail I found both poetic and slightly heartbreaking. I watched from across the street as they talked for nearly 2 hours, their body language shifting from awkward formality to genuine connection. When Ethan brought her back to the house afterward, something had changed in both of them. "She's nothing like her," he said quietly to me while Camille was in the bathroom. Everything that felt artificial about Jessica, the perfect answers, the way she always said exactly what I wanted to hear, Camille is the opposite. "She's real. What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to drive her to the airport tomorrow, and then I'm going to think very carefully about what I want to do next." What Ethan did next surprised everyone, even himself. 3 weeks after Camille returned to France, he booked a flight to Marseille. Not for romance, he insisted, but to see for himself the life Jessica had stolen and twisted into her fictional narrative. He came back 2 weeks later with a new perspective on trust, love, and the difference between falling for a fantasy and connecting with a real person. "I'm not ready for anything serious," he told me over dinner at my house, the first meal we'd shared since Christmas. But Camille and I are going to stay in touch. Maybe visit back and forth, see what develops naturally. "And us?" I asked. "Are we okay?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "You were right to investigate her. You were right to stop the fraud. But you were wrong not to trust me with the truth. If we're going to rebuild our relationship, it has to be based on honesty, even when honesty is hard." I understand. Do you? Because if Camille and I do build something real, if she eventually moves here or I move there, I need to know you'll respect our choices, even if you disagree with them. "I promise," I said and meant it. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation written in elegant Juliet script. Ethan and Camille had decided to marry in a small ceremony in Provence, surrounded by olive groves and the kind of authentic Juliet countryside Jessica had only pretended to know. As I RSVP'd yes with excitement, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us all here. Sometimes the worst deceptions lead to the most honest connections. Sometimes protecting someone means letting them make their own mistakes. And sometimes, when you think you're saving one story, you're actually beginning an entirely new one. The real Emily Parker was nothing like her imposter. And that turned out to be exactly what my son needed to learn to trust love again. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.